When you hear I Ching, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's, mystery, fortune telling, maybe an old sage in these long flowing robes. But what if I told you that this ancient text is way less about predicting the future and more about understanding the fundamental operating system of reality itself? So let's peel back that layer of mystery and see what's really inside.
And that really gets to the heart of it, right? Is the I Ching just a bunch of superstition, something for mystics and those ancient wanderers? Or is it what so many have called the classic of classics, a deep, profound source of wisdom that actually shaped entire civilizations? That's exactly what we're going to dive into. So on one side, you've got the pop culture image. Think of characters in Chinese opera, right? The elaborate robes, the fans, the whole vibe of predicting the future. But the reality? It's so much deeper. The I Ching, also known as the Book of Changes, is literally the foundational text for both Confucianism and Taoism. It's considered the philosophy that sits behind all the other philosophies. Okay, so to really get it, we've got to move past that surface-level idea of fortune-telling. We need to dig in and uncover the book's incredibly deep philosophical core. Here's something most people don't know. The I Ching that we have today, the Zhou Yi, is actually the last of three ancient versions. The two that came before it, the Lianshan Yi and the Guizhan Yi, are mostly lost to history. Now, each version had a slightly different starting point, a different core principle. But it was the Zhou Yi, the one from King Wen's era, that really stuck and became this absolute cornerstone of Chinese thought. And that final version, the Zhou Yi, is built on a philosophy that's so elegant it can be boiled down to three core principles. And these aren't some kind of mystical secrets. Nope, they're described as just observable laws of reality, the unchanging rules that govern our constantly changing world. And here they are. They're called Bianyi, the principle of change, Jianyi, the principle of simplicity, and Buyi, the principle of the unchanging. Seriously, if you can wrap your head around these three ideas, you've got the key to unlocking the entire text.
So first up, Bianyi, or change. This is the big one. It's the idea that absolutely nothing is permanent. The universe, the world, our bodies, even our thoughts, they are all constantly, perpetually transforming. The second you think you've got a handle on something, poof, it's already shifted. It's actually a lot like the Buddhist concept of impermanence. Recognizing that everything is in flux is really the first step toward wisdom.
Okay, so if everything's always changing, how do you make sense of any of it? Well, that brings us to the second principle, Zhenyi, which is simplicity. This tells us that even though the universe looks incredibly complex, just total chaos, the underlying laws that run the whole show are actually simple. They're elegant. And once you understand those basic rules, all that complexity just kind of melts away. There's this classic story about the statesman Zhu Liang, who could supposedly do these insane calculations and predictions with just a few flicks of his fingers, all because he'd simplified the universe's patterns into a system he could manage. And this leads to a really cool paradox, which is the final principle, Bu Yi, the unchanging. Think about it. If everything is always in motion, what's the one constant that allows all that change to even happen? The I Ching says there has to be an eternal, unchanging source, a kind of background that itself never changes. People have given it all sorts of names over the centuries: God, the Tao, the Source. It's the one constant that makes all the infinite variations possible. Okay, so we've got these three big cosmic principles: change, simplicity, and the unchanging. Pretty cool, but how do you actually use them? Well, the I Ching gives us a practical framework, a lens for seeing these principles at work in our everyday lives. It suggests that basically any event, any object, any situation you can think of can be broken down and analyzed through three components. First, there's its Li, that's the underlying principle, the why. Then there's its Shang, that's the observable thing, the what you can see. And finally, there's its Shu, that's the numerical part, the data, its timing, its measurements, its cycles. Now, I know those terms might sound a little abstract, but this simple analogy makes it all click perfectly. Just think of an old cassette tape. The Li, the principle, is the physics of magnetism. That's the why it can store sound. The xiang, the phenomenon, is the physical thing you hold in your hand, the plastic case, the brown tape. And the shu, the number, is its data, its length, its width, the 60 or 90 minutes of recording time it has. See? Simple.
So here's the big takeaway from all that. The I Ching argues that if you can truly grasp these three aspects of anything, the why, the what, and the how much,
you can understand its nature so deeply that you can see the path it's naturally going to take. And that's where the whole idea of prediction comes from. It's not magic, it's just incredibly deep analysis. But this is where it all takes a really surprising turn. After all this talk about deep analysis and understanding the universe, the ultimate wisdom of the I Ching is that you shouldn't actually try to completely master it. The author of our source material put it so well. He says, look, if you actually got so good at the I Ching that you knew exactly what was going to happen, oh, if I go outside, I'm going to trip, so I just won't go. Life would lose all its flavor, the surprise, the mystery, the joy. It'd all be gone. I mean, what's the fun in that?
And that just completely reframes the whole point of studying this ancient book. The goal isn't to become some perfect fortune teller and get rid of all of life's uncertainty. No, the real goal is to develop the wisdom and the curiosity to navigate that uncertainty with grace, with intelligence, and with a sense of wonder.
Which brings us to this final, beautiful piece of advice from Confucius himself. He said the way to approach the I Ching is to wan sua or yo de. And what that means is to find gain through playful exploration. Don't treat it like some rigid textbook you have to memorize. Treat it like a fascinating game, something to play with, to explore, to turn over in your hands and in your mind.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. This ancient wisdom isn't just about dusty old books and philosophy. It's a mindset. So the real question for all of us is, how can we stop trying to control every single outcome and instead start approaching the inevitable changes in our own lives with that same sense of playful exploration?